You think it's going? I guess I'll have to delete that later. All right, hello everybody. My name is Kenneth Hardcastle.
I'm Anna Kenneth.
And this is for the Collier County Public Library Virtual Book Club. We're discussing Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I'm not sure if I got her name right. Anna, you were listening to the book.
That's true. I think Chimamanda is correct and Adichie is correct. I think the way you say her middle name is you kind of hum the N, so it'd be Ngozi.
Ngozi.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. We are going to go through the questionnaire we posted on Facebook last week,
Okay.
And just give our general impressions of Americanah. So Anna, what did you think?
Okay, I liked it. I thought it was something that's very interesting to read about a different culture and learn about different perspectives in the world. It certainly gave me a lot to think about as, you know, me being a white woman living in the United States, how different life and similar life can be for someone living in a country in Africa. There were a lot of things that I didn't know about life in Nigeria that I do now, or at least I think I know. You know, it's obviously it's fiction, but it's based in fact. So that's one of the things I love about reading fiction is that I think I've read studies that somewhere the more literary fiction you read, the more empathetic you become. So I think that this book is a great example of that. What did you think?
I like to think that's true, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
All right, we should describe the book first.
Oh, yes, of course.
First, Americanah follows Ifemelu, a Nigerian expatriate living in the United States, and the journey she takes in deciding to return to her homeland. She's earned some success writing a blog about what it's like to be an African Black navigating the racial minefield of America.
Mm-hmm.
Her former lover, Obinze, is kind of the second part of the narrative, where he's longed for America his whole life. He never gets to go there, but he does go to England for a little bit, a brief stint, and returns to Nigeria, where he comes by great success. And so they're former lovers. They've been apart for a long time, so ever since she went to America. And it's kind of not just the story of immigrants, but the story of their relationship, too.
Very simply put.
Thank you. It's kind of a long book, unsuited to a breakneck reading pace to get it done in time for book club. But there's a lot to like in it. I thought the characters were fully realized and fascinating.
Oh yeah.
I also enjoyed immersing myself in the Nigerian perspective. Enjoyed learning about their drive to hustle, which is something that I've seen in some of the Nigerians that I've met in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also definitely a novel geared towards book reviewers, because it had a lot of intellectual criticism of a wide variety of books. And if you've read those, it certainly enhances your understanding of this novel.
Oh, that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of that, but yes, you're right. She does discuss particularly American literature a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and at the heart of it, there's also a great perspective of why when an immigrant has come so far and been disappointed with America, why they turn back, go back to their own country, or even encourage more people to go. So that was really interesting to get that perspective on.
Okay. What did you think of it? What were your impressions? I mean, you gave us a summary, but...
Those ones?
Oh, those, okay. All right.
So yeah, let's take a look at the questions we have.
Okay. What's the first one?
Question one is, the first part of Ifemelu's story is told in flashback when she's having her hair braided at a salon before she returns to Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
Why might Adichie have chosen this structure for storytelling? And I should say that takes up most of the book.
Yeah.
Like I'd say a good 3/4 of the book. She starts in the salon, and then it's basically one extended flashback to the present. Correct. And then after that, it's that's her returning to Nigeria.
Yeah.
And so it was a really interesting structure, which was frustrating for a while. Why didn't you just start at the beginning and tell us the story? But I thought that in retrospect, the hair braiding told it captured a whole lot of the things that she was talking about throughout the book.
Yeah.
So it proved to be a pretty interesting framing device.
Yeah, and it's not the first time that we've seen this, even in this book club. I mean, when we read Their Eyes Were Watching God, Zora Neale Hurston does the same thing, where I can't remember the protagonist's name. Was it Janie? Janie. When she comes back to town is the beginning of the book, and then the entire book is basically told in flashbacks with them returning to the front porch of her house a couple of times, or the back porch of her house a couple of times. So it's like that, and that flashback set up with somebody telling a story, although she isn't really telling anybody her story in this one. So I guess that might be a little bit of a difference. But I mean, it's a very common device, even going back to Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. That one is told through flashbacks as well.
It's probably fair to say that though she isn't specifically telling anybody her story, that it's kind of reflecting on, she's in there for like 6 hours as she's getting done.
Yeah.
And she's just reflecting on her whole life and all of the choices she made to get to this point.
Yeah.
But I thought it turned out really well.
Yeah, I thought it was effective.
Question 2.
Okay.
The novel opens in the Ivy League enclave of Princeton, New Jersey. Emily likes living there because she could pretend to be someone else, someone adorned with certainty. But she has to go to the largely black city of Trenton nearby to have her hair braided. Does this movement between cities indicate a similar split within Ifemelu? Why did she decide to return to Nigeria after 13 years in America? A lot to that question.
Yeah. So let's just talk about taking the training from Princeton to Trenton. Definitely, she describes it as being a complete economic and class shift from going from one town to the other, which is interesting that there is no place in Princeton for Ifemelu to have her hair braided, as it is a almost completely, although not completely, practice for people of African descent. We saw in the book itself that there was one little white girl that comes in to have her hair put in cornrows while Ifemelu is there having her hair braided. And I don't know, did you feel that was no, never mind. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like you mentioned, the distinct cultural shift between Princeton and Trenton. And I guess you could equate that with, her life in Nigeria and wanting to go to the United States to see what it's like over there. But ultimately, it's not. Ultimately, she decides it's not for her.
Right.
And she goes back to Nigeria.
That was an interesting thing. She had quite an array of experiences being in America, from being a college student on scholarship with no money and having her rent due, having nothing to eat, and being just completely almost on the verge of collapse, to basically self-supporting herself by writing a blog. I mean, that's pretty amazing, because not many people can say that they make their living on writing a blog.
Right.
I mean, that's like a hobby that people do, and
Right.
even then, you know, there isn't usually a lot of financial success in that. So I thought that was really interesting that she had the full gamut of experiences, from being, you know, just completely destitute and almost, you know, giving herself up to, I don't know, the powers that be, or the powers of evil, or whatever. And because it was very close before she got that job as the nanny, you know, that she might actually have to turn to prostitution or something equally. I don't want to say evil, because it wasn't her fault.
Yeah.
You know, she tried very hard to get a job, and nobody would take her.
Evil, but...
Of course, no, that's not what I was saying at all.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the fact that she was driven to do such a thing is evil, that it would happen to her.
Right.
Right. No, prostitutes aren't evil.
And so, yeah, she goes from the absolute bottom of the barrel, which is why she fled from Obinze, stopped talking to him for a decade or more. And then she goes from there immediately into a relationship with a very rich guy, who jets her around the world.
Right.
And then from there into a relationship with Blaine,
who was still not doing too badly for himself.
Right. It wasn't. He wasn't Kurt levels of wealthy, but he was. He was okay.
Yeah.
And so she had the experience with an American black man.
Yes.
Intellectual, very much like Obinze in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think you're right in that. Yeah. Very intellectual, very, very literature oriented. They both were, you know, fascinated by American literature. So, yes.
So we went through that, but that doesn't really answer the question: why does she decide to return to Nigeria?
You know, that's a question that I had been asking myself through the entire thing of reading it, because you know from the beginning that she's planning on going back to Nigeria. And through the entire telling of her story, you're thinking, what was it that flipped the switch in her that just said, that's it, I'm done, I'm going back? And I don't know if there was any one thing that flipped the switch, so to speak. I think it was a lot of little things that built up incrementally. I don't think that there was any one reason that she decided to return to Nigeria.
She had a fight with Blaine.
Yeah, okay.
She had, I'm forgetting right now the nature of that fight, but it did seem kind of related, but not entirely. It wasn't like we're going through a rough patch. Bye.
Right. I mean, and it's not just, you know, we're going through a rough patch, I'm breaking up with you, but I'm staying in America. It's, I'm going back to Nigeria. I mean, that's huge. I mean, yeah, the fight, I'm sure, did have a lot. It was a catalyst, but I don't know if that was a good enough. And I don't. When I say a good enough reason, I don't.
Right. She doesn't necessarily need a reason.
No, she doesn't need a reason. She's got more resources going back than she did when she left. So she will be. I have no doubt that she will turn out great.
Yeah.
I have every faith in Ifemelu.
Yeah, she's got that Nigerian hustle.
She does, yes. Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, we don't really have a good answer to that question, but she doesn't really need a reason.
No, she doesn't.
All right, question 3. How much does your own race affect the experience of reading this or any novel? That's a big one for this novel. Does race affect a reader's ability to identify or empathize with the struggles of Ifemelu and Obinze? Ifemelu writes in her blog that Black people are not supposed to be angry about racism because their anger makes whites uncomfortable. Do you agree?
Well, I think that we're really going through a big thing right now in this particular country about racism and how it's affecting all of us. Yeah, I do think that white people are made uncomfortable when they have to talk about race. I absolutely do. I think I don't think that that's a reason to stop talking though. You do what makes you uncomfortable to get past your comfort zone so you can grow as a person. So I'm all for talking about it. I think that, yeah, I definitely, my race affects everything I do. Just from, the way I was brought up is the way I learned how to, treat people, and the way I learned how to view the world. And somebody who was born in Nigeria, I think, has a very different perspective than I do. And I'm all for learning about that.
Well put.
Thank you.
So I thought this book was, the way I put it was, it beat me over the head with extraordinary subtlety.
Okay, yeah. I can sympathize. I can agree with that. I recognize that.
So the way to explain that.
Okay.
Ifemelu endures hundreds of small offenses or microaggressions throughout the book, at the hands of usually well-meaning people. And the subtle part to me is that she doesn't react to them. And I don't know whether that's because that's what Black people in America have to do, which she says a lot of the time, or because she doesn't recognize that it's an insult because she's from a different culture.
Correct.
Or if she's not offended because she's from a different culture, or she recognizes the insult but just isn't offended by it, or some combination of all of those. And it's also written in such a way that it requires American racial context to understand yourself. Yeah. So it's possible for a reader to just miss that entirely. So that's the subtlety that I found really fascinating.
And you say subtlety, and yet you also said it hits you over the head with it. So
right. The flip side. So it's an issue I had with the book, is that every situation described in the book is a daily reality for a significant portion of America. Not just Black people, not just Africans, but immigrants of all types. But some of the anecdotes are nonetheless painfully contrived to make a point.
Okay. For instance?
Paula takes out her phone to read Ifemelu's blog post to the whole group.
Yes.
And I could only think, just send them the link. Come on.
Right.
So that was just kind of an awkward way of shoehorning in that blog post, which was an insightful read.
It was.
But, come on.
Yes.
So that's kind of my take on that.
Did you think that life in Nigeria, was it what you expected, or was it different? The way she describes it.
I don't know if I came in with any expectations.
Okay.
I've read a couple of other books set in Nigeria.
Okay. I have not, so maybe you didn't have expectations because you already had some frame of reference.
I feel like I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Lagos and the surroundings are an urbanized city.
Sure.
That, coming from the American perspective, we're kind of trained to expect, anything from tribal huts to,
skyscrapers.
Yeah. And a whole range of things.
Sure.
But it's an urbanized city that that I'm sure exceeds a lot of Americans' expectations. I wasn't surprised by that, but it's simultaneously going to be different than you expect, and have a lot of familiar things, like cell phones, for instance.
Well, her parents didn't have a phone for a very long time, which when she had to call home, she had to call to the next door neighbor, I believe, and leave a message, which was, they had a lot of things that, that we come to expect in an urban city, but that was one thing that they didn't have. And that one was something that just kind of surprised me because of the ubiquity of cell phones in this country and what I've seen in many other countries as well. So, I mean, obviously this book was set in the past, so I'm sure that things
10 years ago about.
Right. So I'm sure that things are different now once they get the infrastructure in place, but I think that they were probably, a little bit behind Western countries in getting the infrastructure of cell phones put in.
So she describes like regular blackouts and the importance of generators.
Right. Right. Auntie Uju has a generator when she lives with, when she is the mistress of the general.
Right, and when she left that house,
they're saying, take the generator.
Make sure to take the generator. That's the important thing.
Yes, that's the important thing. And that was something that I had not considered. In fact, there are a lot of things that I had not considered. I have to admit that this is the first book that I've read that was partially told or set in an African country, sub-Saharan Africa.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's just what it is for me. And now that I've started, I'm interested to learn more. So
we touched on this next question just a little bit. Auntie Uju's relationship with the generals serves as an example of one mode of economic survival for a single woman. She attaches herself to a married man who supports her in return for sexual access. But Uju runs into a serious problem when the general dies and political power shifts. Why, given what you learn of her intelligence and capabilities later, do you think she chose to engage in this relationship with the general instead of remaining independent? Well, I think it's easier for one, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, she was a certified doctor and she couldn't make a living at it in Nigeria, which is a travesty if you think, I mean, someone who has medical training that cannot put food on the table is something that's just, I mean, that shouldn't be happening. That's a skill set that any country would need. So I think I feel her frustration and her anger at not being able to do that. Yeah, you're right. It is easy. It's very easy to be taken care of. She finds out the opposite is true when the general dies and she moves to America.
And she works really hard for a long time.
Yeah, she does, like for 10 years.
To get her footing, get a degree.
Yes.
And ultimately comes out the other end as a reasonably successful American doctor. So, well, I mean, I guess she ends up being able to have it both ways for a time.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of work in between.
Yeah.
Her relationships are something of an interesting theme in the book as well.
Yeah.
Because of the guy she is married
to.
The guy she's married to in the middle. Was she married? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think they were married because I think DK was adopted by him. Wasn't he? Or maybe not. I don't know.
We'll have to brush up on that.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of similarities between the general and her next boyfriend.
Right.
And she seemed to think that was either what she could get or what she deserved. And
Yeah.
after a long time, she realizes that she can do better, and
Right.
then gets into a relationship with the guy she's with at the end of the book, which is I should really know these names a lot better. But it's
there were a lot of characters in this book, so I can't blame you for not memorizing them all.
but that was seemed to be a really good relationship. And
Yeah, and I was glad to see
that
she had finally gotten, you know, somebody who deserved her, because I don't think any of the men she had before then deserved her.
And this kind of folds into question number 5.
Okay.
Ifemelu feels that Auntie Uju is too eager to capitulate to the demands of fitting in. Uju says, "You're in a country that is not your own. You do what you have to do if you want to succeed." Is she right in compromising her own identity? And how is DK affected by his mother's struggle?
Well, DK has a unique, well, maybe not a unique situation. I think he has a situation of a lot of people that was not something I had considered before. His mother works very, very hard to support him. She works 3 jobs at the beginning when she comes to America. She's studying for her medical board exams at night. She has a very hard time. She's living in a crappy little tiny apartment in Brooklyn. And she I forget where I was going with this. I'm sorry.
No worries.
DK, yes. Okay. So DK, he has a mother who is doing everything to make sure that he has success in life. And yet he sees her struggling to make success of herself. She's giving him everything and taking nothing back for herself. I think that would definitely, whether or not the kid understands it, would definitely give him a maybe not, I don't want to say a complex, but it would definitely affect him, seeing his mother sacrifice so much for his own good.
And it does affect him as he tries
Yes.
to commit suicide.
Right.
And I felt like we didn't get to see enough of DK to understand 100% why he did it, or why he tried.
Right.
I mean, the struggles of being so what Ifemelu keeps writing about, an African black in a country in America is tricky, and he's kind of a first generation, and we get some snippets of him growing up, but basically you don't see
much of him after the summer that Ifemelu spends with them in Brooklyn.
Right.
I mean,
you don't see like the specific, like, was there girl trouble? Was there boy trouble? Was there school trouble? And to some extent, yes to all of those, I'm sure, like any adolescent who considers suicide. But yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah,
but his mother's struggle is definitely a part of it. And that's kind of, I feel like, maybe the best insight that we get.
Yeah. Are there other questions?
That's it for the questions.
Okay.
Any closing thoughts?
I really liked the book. I thought her voice was authentic and interesting, and gave me some perspectives and things to think about that I had not previously, or just had not been introduced to. So, I mean, it was, I think I've read I don't want to say a lot, I've read a fair amount of African American literature, but as far as reading something from the perspective of an African, I have not. So this was a very interesting book for me. I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed the book. It was a difficult intellectual read, but had a lot of interesting perspective, and it was also really funny at times.
Yeah.
Just little things throughout. Like men are the true romantics, in my opinion, and the opinion of the author. Spicy plastic for those chicken nuggets.
Yes.
Um, I just had a lot of really good insight.
Mhm.
Like people of all types just kept asking her if she knew other Nigerians when they found out
Right.
she was Nigerian.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like, oh, you're Nigerian. I know so and so. Do you know him? Yeah, that's actually
There's millions of people there. I
yes, yes,
mean,
yes, yes.
um, half caste, not an insult in Nigeria,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
a fact
Hmm.
for biracial people.
Right.
Um, yeah, so just lots of interesting little things throughout that definitely deserve more thought than we can give.
I think I'm going to be thinking about this book for a long time. So thank you, Chimamanda.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Anna, and
Yep.
thank you. And we will see you next week. Make sure to contact me, kenneth.hardcastle@colliercountyfl.gov, in order to get an invite to the book discussion on Zoom.
I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic.
All right.
Thanks a lot, everybody.